Monster Hunter World provides hunters with numerous tools and weapons to take on the beasts that roam the world. With each weapon comes a unique set of moves and mechanics that a hunter must master. With training and knowledge of these, a hunter can decimate the monstrous foes that lie in their way. I'm Darkblade, and in this video we're going to bring you a hunter's guide to the lance. The lance is a weapon that favours strong defence thanks to the gigantic shield it comes with. Able to withstand a lot of attacks from enemies, it is one of the most, if not the most defensive weapon in the game. Nonetheless though, it also comes with offensive options thanks to its long reaching lance that is surprisingly precise with its attacks. This means that you can focus on weak points like heads and easily deal damage with the simple combos the weapon has. Now on the surface, players may view the lance as a slow weapon, but thanks to the sidestep and guard dash mechanics, the lance can be surprisingly nimble. This all combines into a weapon that not only allows a hunter to deal damage, but also offers them great survivability. With enough practice, rarely will you have to worry about fainting with this weapon. But anyway, let's move on to the basic moves of the lance. The moveset for the lance is fairly straightforward, at least when it comes to attacks. Their basic draw attack, done with triangle, is a mid-thrust. This can also be done with your weapon out. This can be then followed up by mid-thrust 2 and a mid-thrust 3 by pressing triangle a second and third time. You then have an alternative version of this called the high thrust, which causes the lance to attack high. This is done by pressing circle with the weapon drawn. This can then be followed up into a high thrust 2 and a high thrust 3, again by pressing circle a second and then third time. You then have a wide sweep. This is done by pressing triangle and circle. Next you have counter thrust. This is done by pressing R2 and then circle. This causes your hunter to pull back with the lance and then thrust it high towards a monster. You can also hold this to perform a stronger version of the counter thrust. However, the counter thrust is most useful because it will counter attack an enemy should they hit you during the time you're charging up this move, allowing you to not only block the attack, but follow that block up with an attack of your own. It should be noted though that the counter thrust won't work on attacks that are too strong, so attacks that would potentially push a player back. The cancel thrust though will be performed should you just tap R2 and circle. Next is the power guard, a wonderful tool for the lance. Now this can be performed in two ways. The first and easiest way to do it is during a counter thrust. So you would perform the counter thrust, hold R2 and circle, and then immediately go into R2 and X. The longer you hold this, the longer you will stay in this stance. This will cause your hunter to get down on one knee, and a blue shield aura will form around them. This enables a hunter to block all but the strongest of attacks. However, whilst you're in this stance, it will drain your stamina, unfortunately. You can also go into the power guard as a guard reaction. Now should you block an attack that pushes your hunter back, then you can perform the power guard as a guard reaction. Now after you perform the power guard, a few options are available to you. You can either perform a leaping thrust with triangle or a counter thrust with circle. Which attack is best depends on the situation you're in and the monster you're facing. The next basic move is guard, which is done simply by holding R2. This will cause you to raise your shield, allowing your hunter to block attacks. Whilst the attack still might deal a tiny bit of damage, what is more important to keep an eye on is that blocking attacks will drain your stamina. Nonetheless though, when you're guarding, more options become available to you. Whilst guarding, you can press triangle to perform a guard thrust. This is a simple poke attack that enables you to attack and block at the same time. Whilst guarding, you can also go into the counter thrust by pressing circle whilst you're holding R2. You can also perform a forward or back step by pressing X whilst guarding. This comes in handy for repositioning yourself. You have also access to the guard dash, which is forward in triangle whilst blocking. We'll get more into this basic ability in a minute. And then you have access to the dash attack, which is triangle and circle. Now the dash attack allows a hunter to charge forward with the lance, picking up speed the longer they run. However, this does drain your stamina. Nonetheless though, it's a nice way to deal damage to a monster, as it will deal continuous damage to any target it touches. A hunter will continue running until they either run out of stamina or until they perform one of the following moves. The first would be the reverse attack, which is back and triangle while dashing. This causes your hunter to attack behind them while dashing. Next is to simply stop, which is done by just pressing X. You also have access to the dash step, so whilst dashing you can press left and right and X to shimmy left and right whilst running. You then have the dash turn, which is done while dashing by pressing back and X. This will cause your hunter to do a 180-degree turn on the spot and allow you to still continue running in the opposite direction. Next you have the advance and jump, which is forward and X whilst dashing. This will cause your hunter to jump in the air. Now whilst this doesn't cancel the dash itself, it allows you to combo into some more moves, namely the advance and jump and thrust, which is done by pressing triangle or circle following the advance and jump. This causes your hunter to thrust forth with the lance, dealing damage in the air and potentially allowing a hunter to mount a monster with this move. Whilst dashing as well, you can also press R2 to block. Should you notice your hunter dashing into danger, just press R2 to block the incoming attack. And finally, while dashing is the finishing thrust, which is done by pressing triangle. This stops the dash and allows the hunter to thrust forward with a powerful hit. This finishing thrust, or finishing twin thrust, changes depending on how fast and how far your hunter has been dashing. Should your hunter dash just a short distance, it will be a simple finishing thrust. However, should your hunter be dashing a long distance, picking up speed, getting the red aura around them, then it will be the finishing twin thrust, which deals more damage. Next, you have the back step, which is done by pressing X. This will cause your hunter to perform a back step, however it will consume stamina. Next, you have the long back step, which is done mid-combo by pressing back and X. This will cause your hunter to hop backwards a longer distance. Again, similar to the normal back step, this can be then followed up with combos or further back steps. You have the forward step, which is next, which is pressing forward and X or forward and X during the middle of a combo. You also have access to the side step, which is left or right and X during the middle of a combo. All of these come in handy at helping your hunter reposition themselves when fighting a monster. However, things become a lot more maneuverable when you start using the guard dash mechanic. Guard dash is a move that, while blocking R2 and pressing forward in triangle, causes your hunter to lunge forward towards a monster. However, during this lunge your shield will be up, allowing you to block any incoming attack. However, this will consume stamina. Nonetheless though, the guard dash comes in very useful because you can follow it up in multiple ways. Not only that as well, the guard dash can be performed in different directions. For example, you can guard dash backwards by pressing back R2 in triangle during the middle of a combo, or you can guard dash left or right by pressing left or right and R2 and triangle in the middle of a combo. Now both the back and the left and right versions of the guard dash will be in the direction of the monster so long as you do them during the middle of the combo. Should you do guard dash with back, left or right, whilst not being in the middle of a combo, it will cause your hunter to turn and face in that direction. However, following a guard dash, a few options are available to you. You can perform a shield attack, which is triangle following a guard dash. This will cause you to attack a monster with your shield, dealing blunt damage, potentially knocking out a monster. And then finally you have the leaping thrust, which is circle following a guard dash. You also can aim this pretty well, allowing you to easily pinpoint where you want the thrust to go. But anyway, let's move away from the basic moves and talk about the inner mechanics of the lance. First of all are the guarding and countering mechanics. Now we briefly mentioned them in the basic moves, but nonetheless they are an integral part of the mechanics behind the lance. Now as I mentioned, you can block most attacks by just simply holding up your shield. However, you want to utilise the countering mechanics behind the counter thrust move whilst blocking. This is because from a standing position or a guarding position, or whilst in the middle of a combo, you can perform the counter thrust, which is R2 and circle. Now, should you be anticipating a monster's attack, this allows the hunter to turn the tide on a monster. Now, knowing the different attack patterns of a monster can come in handy when using this, as sometimes going straight for the counter thrust is not always optimal. Sometimes a monster will have 2 or 3 attacks, so you need to block the first attack or the first 2 before going into the counter thrust to counter attack that third and final hit from the monster. The next mechanic is the power guard. Now whilst performing a counter thrust or whilst guarding and getting a guard reaction, the lance can then perform a power guard. This will drop your hunter down onto one knee and greatly increase the defensive capabilities and blocking capabilities of the lance. And this will also block attacks in a 360-degree radius around the hunter. This will reduce damage and knockback from actually guarding an attack. But more importantly, it will quickly drain your stamina. Should your stamina drain before the monster's attack has hit you, then you'll leave yourself wide open. So this is something to be aware of when going for the power guard. But nonetheless, the power guard is a strong defensive move, and with the right build and armor skills can even block attacks such as Nergigante's dive bomb. Again though, knowing a monster's attack pattern and moves is vital for getting the most out of the power guard. Of course, it also should be said as well that should you block an attack with the power guard, don't forget you can follow up with counter attacks of your own. Next is guard dashing and general movement. Now whilst the lance itself is quite slow to move and that, utilising guard dashing as well as the bunny hops and back steps the lance can perform allows a hunter with a lance to still remain quite mobile. They allow you to reposition yourself or continue pushing towards a monster's location or retreat if need be. However, you can interrupt these with attacks of your own to potentially perform these indefinitely. For example, You could do guard dash with R2 forward in triangle, then perform a leaping thrust with circle, and then go back into the guard dash again, and then into the leaping thrust again, rinse and repeat. Of course, depending on what the situation calls for, will dictate your movement with this weapon. But nonetheless, getting used to this way of moving with the lance is one of the key areas you need to master. And then finally is the hit zones. Now the lance thrusting attacks deal damage to monsters differently depending on the monster's hit zone values. For example, when a lance hits, the attack will generally select the weaker hit zone value between the Severin hit zone value and the blunt hit zone value. But regardless of which hit zone is selected for calculating the actual damage, the attack dealt will always count as Severin. So say a monster's head is weaker against blunt damage, then lance hits against that zone will have the value of the blunt attacks. Nonetheless though, the damage will actually still count as Severin. This is one of the strong points when it comes to the precision damage of the lance. But anyway, let's move away from the internal functions and mechanics to talk about the useful combos for the lance. Now all of these combos can be intertwined with one another, but nonetheless though, let's go over the useful combos that I personally like to use. The first is the mid-thrust combo, which is simply triangle, triangle, triangle. This causes your hunter to thrust 3 times towards the monster's location. However, following the third thrust, I press back in X to cause my hunter to jump back and reposition himself to allow me to perform the mid-thrust combo again. This is because all the thrusting combos with the lance will cause your hunter to move forward inch by inch, and that back and X allows you to reposition yourself and normally allow all the attacks to hit again. Next is the high thrust combo, which is exactly the same as the mid thrust combo, except it's done with circle, 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 and then back and X again. Unlike the mid thrust combo, the high thrust allows you to hit monsters' body parts that are high up, like heads and that. The next combo I like to use utilizes the counter thrust, which would be R2 and circle, then follow that up with circle, then R2 and circle again, and then circle again, rinse and repeat. Now you can replace the circle attack with the basic mid-thrust triangle attack, but this is a little combo that allows you to potentially catch a monster's attack and perform that automatic counter attack. Next is the guard dash chasing combo, as I like to call it, which is done by performing a guard dash, so that's R2 forward and triangle, follow that up by circle, and then R2 forward and triangle again, and then follow it by circle. This will cause your hunter to constantly lunge towards the monster and then follow it up with a leaping thrust. However, the combos that I end up using the most utilize a combination of all these previous useful combos. So for example, I would start by performing a guard dash, so that's R2 forward in triangle, follow that up with a shield attack, which is triangle again, and then follow that up by going into the mid thrust or high thrust combo, then perform a backwards guard dash, which is back whilst holding R2 and triangle, and then follow that up with a leaping thrust, which is circle, and then go back into the mid thrust or high thrust combos. Now of course you can augment this and change it up should you wish. You can add counter thrusts in there if you want, or you can even perform the guard dash left or right to reposition yourself. You also don't have to perform the leaping thrust, you can go back into the shield attack again. It all depends on what the monster is doing and what is best for the situation. But anyway, let's move away from the useful combos to talk about the aerial and environmental maneuvers for the lance. Now there are really only 2. The first is a jumping thrust, which is done by pressing triangle whilst mid-air. However, should you perform a dash attack whilst running into a tree or wall you can run up, you will then perform another jumping thrust attack. This can potentially come in useful for mounting a monster. Next is the advancing jump, which is done while sliding and then pressing triangle. You can also perform the various dash attacks and maneuvers when it comes to sliding down a hill. But anyway, let's move on to the additional information for the lance. Now I have covered most of it in the internal mechanics and the basic moves. You should try to get used to counter attacking, anticipating a monster's attack through using the counter thrust and power guard mechanics. It should be also noted that whilst guarding, whether it be the normal guard, power guard, your stamina will be drained when you block attacks. Should you have insufficient stamina to actually take a hit, then the guard will fail and you'll take damage. It should also be noted that whilst guarding and staying on the spot, your stamina will not be restored. However, a player can still spin around on the spot or move forward to recover that stamina while still being able to keep your guard up. The mid thrust and high thrust combos, they do have a slow recovery animation after the third hit. However, this can be cancelled out of through numerous methods. For example, like I mentioned, pressing back and X will jump you back and cancel that slow recovery animation. Another tip is that in between all of the attacks and combos you can perform, you can actually delay the next move in the combo. This can come in handy when anticipating a monster's follow-up attack. Whilst the delay window isn't incredibly long, it nonetheless can come in useful. It should also be noted that certain attacks with the lance come with a natural mind's eye. These attacks include the leaping thrust, the counter thrust, and the finishing thrust, so these attacks won't bounce off a monster's hide. And the final tip is, if you notice a friendly hunter who's about to be attacked by a projectile or something, should you reposition yourself, stand in front of them, you can actually block the incoming attack, protecting them from danger. Whilst this is easier said than done, it's a nice mechanic, and if you are able to utilise it, it feels very satisfying. But anyway, let's move on to the pros and cons of the lance. The biggest pro is its strong guarding capabilities. From its normal guard, to the counter thrust, to the power guard, these all help solidify the lance as one of the best defensive weapons in the game. On top of this as well, most of these guarding capabilities can be followed up with attacks of your own, allowing you to counter-attack a monster. The next pro is the long reach of the attacks. This means that you don't always have to be right up close and personal with a monster. You can stay a little distance away from them and still be able to hit them. It's actually surprising how far the lance will reach, and certain attacks like the leaping thrust will cover quite a distance. And the next pro is, despite having a very slow movement speed, the lance can still be quite manoeuvrable. This is thanks to guard dashing as well as the various steps it can perform. This allows you to keep up with a monster, keeping constant pressure on them, and even if they should fight back, then you have the capabilities to block those attacks and still keep going. However, on the flip side, the cons are that unfortunately it has very short evade options. It can't really get out of the way of attacks. Yes, it can block them, but nonetheless it's hard to completely avoid them unless you actually sheath the weapon. And the final con is the weapon unfortunately eats through sharpness really quickly, so utilising skills, armour and weapons to help reduce this is something to keep an eye out when using the lance. Now overall, the lance on the surface may not be appealing to everyone. On the surface it may just look like a big shield with a long pokey stick, but if you should look past that, then you'll find a very intricate weapon. Now okay, yes, the big shield does mean that it is one of the most defensive weapons in the game. This complemented with the counter thrust and power guard moves means that a hunter will be able to take a lot of punishment before going down. This is of course unless they are caught in the bag. But a hunter using the lance should not really allow this to happen, especially when you utilise the guard dash and backstep mechanics. This normally allows a hunter to keep the monster firmly in front of them, in front of their shield, and also in sight of their lance. The lance itself as well may not be the most hard hitting of weapons, but it has an incredible reach, and on top of that you can be very precise with it, hitting weak points easily and mixing together very fluid combos. As I said, this allows you to keep a constant pressure on a monster and not give them room to breathe. If you're a player who likes a tanky style of gameplay, who likes to keep the pressure on a monster whilst at the same time constantly attacking and being able to counter-attack a monster, then I can definitely recommend the lance. Now remember that the damage numbers and effectiveness of the weapons can vary due to numerous factors, from gear, buffs, monster defenses to even the environment. All of these can help or hinder a weapon's performance. With that in mind, learning as much as you can about a weapon as possible can help achieve a successful hunt. Anyway, I hope this video has been informative, and until next time, I've been Darkblade, bringing you a hunter's guide to the lance in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.